And you could call what I want to talk about living in the gap, which is a very challenging place to live because it's the gap between who you are now and an ideal self, or say an aspirational self. And I want to distinguish between that and the suffering it can cause, and what I mean by, you might think of it as your future self. So I'll just start with what I mean. By future self, I mean like who you are now, if you weren't afraid to be that. And in other words, that's what you are living into who you are already, but you are, for whatever reasons, not fully expressing that. So that's different than uh, how it's often presented in the self-help movement or even the therapeutic paradigms, where there's an ideal self that you have to cultivate, that you have to engineer into existence. And maybe it's an ideal of somebody like Jesus or the Buddha or some woman saint in the future, but that if you were a really good person, if you were a really fulfilled person, you would approximate, what and who they are. And this, of course, it can lead to a lot of striving, a lot of trying harder to be better. And you've heard me say before, and so I'm reiterating in some ways here, that I think whenever we're in that trying mode, we're in ego. Even if what we're trying for is spiritual enlightenment or awakening, um, it's still we're still locked into ego, trying to be more than who it is. And so we live with the acute awareness of who we are now, but and the gap between that and who we imagine, the self in the future that we have to engineer, or somehow, through whatever means, through more therapy, through more spiritual retreats, get to. But it's somebody who we're not at present. And I think that this is driven by, you won't be surprised to hear me say this, by a core belief of I'm not enough. Like that I have to be more. And in this case, the more that I have to be is like more aware, more realized, more human, more of something. And where I've come to in my own journey is that it's not really about that. It's about the more is simply a matter of a deeper, fuller, broader expression of who we are already, but we've forgotten. So it can feel like we're expanding or we're becoming someone other than who we are, but my deepest sense is that we are actually always already that self. It's just that the future self is going to change and emerge uh, in relation to changing conditions in our life. So it's more a matter of dropping in. Now, this is different. I mean, I've changed my view on this because I used to be sort of famous in my own little way. All my previous books were written about evolutionary spirituality. But in retrospect, it's a bit sort of humbling. But in retrospect, I realized that I was really coming from this aspirational paradigm, which is that um, because we are the presence of an evolutionary process that's unfolding, we have the capacity, therefore, to be that evolutionary presence, and and therefore to evolve ourselves. And there's truth to it, but if it's held in a certain in the paradigm that I've been describing, it could be uh, an expression of it can be egoic without realizing it. So I think that what happens is that I do feel like we are that there is an evolutionary impulse that is part of this big thing that's living us that simply wants to become more of itself. But that evolutionary impulse at the big level is again, whatever that is, God, spirit, the great mystery creator, the creative matrix, is more about an expression of an originating, an original manifesting intelligence that is just taking different forms. But to the objective observer, it looks like evolution of that. And it looks like that might be almost trying to evolve, but I think it's just like because that has infinite potential, it's just the way in which that manifests um, changes in the domain of time and space, and actually appears to increase in complexity. Um, so I don't know. Do you kind of get what I'm saying here? Like there's a sense in which like this isn't an invitation for you to um, grow yourself into something that you are not already. It's like an invitation to drop into your beauty and your radiance and your creativity, which is original and of which you are a manifestation of. And that's going to look, you are going to change and you are going to evolve, I suppose you could say, but you're going to evolve into something that you already are. I don't know. So I'm belaboring this a bit, but I think it's important because some of you are working on, weeks 10 through 11, and and it can be interpreted what I'm saying through this lens of I have to be more than who I am. And you can be living in the gap that I'm talking about between sort of the ideal self that I should be and I'm not. And, and that just generates suffering. And so there's no place to get to. There's no one to get to. All there is like clearing away everything that is not you and then responding creatively and ever anew to these new conditions. And of course, that's going to look like evolution, but it's both your evolution, but it's also uh, you just expressing the you-ness of you, which is going to be unique and surprising. And you're going to be discovering that for yourself, who you are. Um, because this discovery is grounded in the fact that you're not, as we've talked about, ego can only, it's ego is creative, but it only can recreate the past. But when you're situated in heart self, then this mode of unapologetic self-expression comes through, and then the discovery of who you are in response to this and this and this person and that person and these conditions, and it becomes an exciting journey to discover what wants to come out of you. I've always been enough. There's a sense in which I'm perfect. I just need to express the perfection of my soul and being part of that perfection involves failure and trying again, and or failure and then learning from the failure over and over again. So it's not like perfection means that we never make a wrong choice or do something that is out of integrity with ourselves. It's just that we learn. We're constantly learning. That's part of the perfection of who you are and who you've always been. That's seems to be what life is doing. It's like it's teaching, 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 and until we truly relax into our